All right, so we're here in the refinery studio with Dan Nicholas and with Derek Boyd and with John Steppen and with Alpha Omega Leadership. And we've had the real good fortune of being together with each other for the last couple of days here in the refinery. And at least on my part, I feel that way. I don't know. I can't speak for anyone else around the table, but I've been doing some good work and really leading towards making an impact for people, and I want to get into that. We're going to be talking about some different topics here, and working through some ideas that are going to kind of make their way through us and to other people as a way of adding value to people and taking people to higher levels in different areas of their life. And what we want to do though now, since we've been involved in a process for a few months together, but we're really kind of still getting started, and this is an emerging thing that we're birthing, we're building, we're figuring out, and I think we've all felt like it's been some good valuable time. And I want to get into the discussions. We've realized in these discussions that we have so many things that need to be shared and need to be discussed among people, and some really essential questions that people should be asking themselves if they really want to be a person of growth, if they're looking to improve any area, make any area of their life better. So we'll talk about all that. But what I'd like to do is, we've had a good amount of time along with that to just enjoy each other's company, to get to know each other. And I want to give the opportunity for anyone who might be watching this video who wouldn't know any of us to get to know us and our stories a little bit more, and how we came together. You and I recorded yesterday, and we were having a discussion about how Paul Martinelli brought us together for this
Thought there was
purpose.
a good time yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very good. So okay, so Dan, one of the things that came out yesterday was you had a tremendous story of transformation in your life, and what we really centered on yesterday was kind of your background, kind of the history that led to where you are. What occurs to me as we had that conversation is we did a really good job of defining what a lot of what your background was, a lot of what your history was. We didn't talk a lot about what here looks like right now. And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this question. I'll tell you why I felt like this was important to discuss, because I think it's very easy, first of all, for someone to tell us on the surface about a challenge that they've had in their lives. And there may be some level in which we can connect with it, but it can get to a place where it almost feels like a soundbite, meaning, yeah, we can sort of connect some dots. We can kind of make some inferences. We can guess what that meant. Um, but if we haven't heard enough of the story, we don't really understand,
Mm.
and we haven't really connected. And I think we're often quite willing to share sort of the past, right? Once we get in a place where we feel like there's not really I think when we feel like we have the opportunity to have openness and a healthy level of vulnerability, we're probably we're probably ready and willing to share what we've been through. And I think that's important
Yeah.
because every one of us are going through something right now. And the value of us sharing what we've been through would be the encouragement of where we can be. But maybe sometimes we don't do a good enough job of talking about what does here look like. So let me, if you don't mind, Dan, ask you to summarize, give me a paragraph about your life from age 28, let's say, to age 40. Give me a paragraph of what happened from, because you had a very spiritual experience at 28,
Oh, yeah.
a tremendous conversion experience at that time. So between that time and let's say the age of 40, give me a paragraph about what happened in that time frame of your life.
Sure. First of all, I want to start. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. You've been
Absolutely.
wonderful, and you've made the refinery feel like home. And Just spending the last several hours today with you, and of course, all day yesterday was a real wonderful, wonderful place to be. And ironic that it's called the refinery because
Yeah,
it was refining all of us.
it
So,
is. Yeah,
thank you
great.
so much, and for the investment that you're making into
Appreciate that.
us, and the growth that you're helping us go through, that you're
Absolutely.
refining within us. Yeah, it's been really valuable. A paragraph or two, boy,
Yeah, yeah. I have a reason for the paragraph.
yeah,
You'll
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
understand when I come to
Because you
the
know me real well, right?
well,
Yeah,
that's one
yeah,
reason.
that's right. Um, I think is a lot of it was due to my past and the immaturity that I had,
Yes.
due to by some of the choices I really lacked in the maturity area.
Okay.
So really, from the age of 28 and fast track up to 40, really a lot of maturity and growth, and a lot of it. It was either sink or swim.
Okay.
You better grow up quick. And you better start making wise decisions,
Mhm.
and better decisions lead to less regrets. So I knew I was sick and tired of for the last decade, 2 decades of bad
Right.
choices, which
Mhm.
led to a lot of regrets
Yeah.
that continued, and I had to work through those, had to overcome my past choices, trying to make my crooked path straight. But I also had to start planning for my future. So a
Yeah.
lot of struggle, a lot of growth, a lot of maturity.
Okay, so let me ask you this. By the age of 40, how many kids did you have?
We had four.
You had 4 kids by the age of 40. How many businesses did you own by the age of 40?
We four.
4 businesses. So part of what you shared in our talk yesterday was that you as you were turning things around and getting your feet back on the ground, I suppose, of a way of putting it, you were working for a roofing company, and there was a point at which you said, "Wait a minute, I can
I
do
can do
this,
this
right?
myself.
And
That
I
guy
get to
can do it.
make a
I
lot more
surely can do
money,
it.
right?" And
Right.
so you
Yeah.
went on that pathway that you kind of stepped out into the
Mhm. Yeah,
entrepreneurial
there
journey,
was
right?
a little bit of fear there of
Yeah.
stepping out, like how it is in many of us when something's new, and when we've had a lot of unsurety about ourselves, when we question our past choices, because a lot of them have been bad. But
Yeah.
I shared with you yesterday, I had one guy that was working with me and just gave me a little bit of encouragement and
Yeah.
kind of a little push a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is where I think I want to jump way ahead, and I want to jump ahead to today. And I think because we want to talk about the process a little bit, and we're going to talk specifically about really not necessarily our processes. I want to hear our stories, but we're really talking about principles here that have been helpful and in a real systematic way. We intend to bring that to people, but here's what I want people to understand is that what just let's go with this. Right before you came here, where were you right before you were here?
Like today?
Right before today, before you came to the refinery, where did you come in from? You were on another trip, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so share about that because I think it's one of those experiences that if people I want people to understand like what here looks like right now a little bit for you. So where were you?
Oh, okay. Boy, I'm a little slow.
That's all right. We'll
You know,
get
the
there.
little
We're
yellow
there.
bus that
Yeah.
I was that guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I had an opportunity to go with one of my friends,
Hmm.
and we went hunting in South Dakota. We flew into Atlanta there the other day, and then we took a private jet to South Dakota.
Hmm.
Went to Paul Nelson's pheasant farm, a huge, huge, probably about 10, 15 sections just of where you can hunt pheasant.
Right.
And went with one of my friends, John Maxwell,
Okay.
who's one of the basically world renowned in leadership. He has like 30 or 40 New York bestsellers, wrote over 80 books. So, and he's known as one of the most world's treasured experts in the leadership and growth
Yeah.
areas.
So we're talking about a household name here. Look, I understand your heart and being around you. I know this. You're not a person who's looking for fanfare. You're not looking for a big audience to stand up and applaud. You're not pumping up your ego. You have a tremendous heart, which you've proven over and over again. Your heart for people, your heart, your heart for their soul. Uh,
Didn't used to be like
but it
that.
didn't used to be
Yeah,
that
that's
way, and
right.
I think this is the thing that what I'm suggesting here to people is we could have had 2 hours of talking here and missed what is happening in your life that is so drastically different than what was once happening in your life? And I know that there were experiences that you had on this recent trip that with John that were for you and John alone.
Mm-hmm.
I know that so there were some things that not everybody needs to know, but I want to impress upon people that you weren't going to be the guy at 25 on a hunting trip with John uh, and having those kinds of experiences. You weren't in a place to do that, right?
Wasn't in a place mentally, physically, or nor spiritually or relationally.
Or
None of
relationally. But the potential for that was already inside of you.
I truly believe that. Yes, the
Yeah.
opportunities was always there, just
Yeah.
like what it is in everybody.
So let me ask you, could you name I think it's good for people to understand John is a household name. John Maxwell is a household name, but his inner circle is a very small group of people.
Yes.
It's a very small group of people. And so John is the kind of guy who's going to influence, impact millions of people and has.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very often that you could run into people and talk about his, of course, his most well-known book is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I cannot tell you the number of industries in which I've interacted with people who have talked about how important and impactful that book was in their lives. So many, many people who have never met John have been impacted by him. Thousands upon thousands of people have been in the room with John.
Mm-hmm.
Probably now hundreds of thousands of those people have stood in a line and walked up and shaken John's hand and getting their picture taken with him, right? And are probably out. That's all over their social media or whatever.
True.
But not very many people have sat with him in a recliner next to him and had a very private conversation and
watch football
and
with
watch-
them and
yeah.
eat with them several times throughout the week.
Yeah. So we're talking about that your life moved in such a way that you were able to be one of a very small handful of people who is able to be close to people like that. He's not the only person of that kind of renown that you've been
Sure.
able to be close to and be aware of. And then, of course, that's not even to mention the impact of your life and the things that you've done. But I bring that up not to impress people, but I think it's something that people they would recognize his name and go, I don't know how many really well-known people I've gone on a hunting trip with, right? And
He's a pretty good shot.
And he's a good shot.
He's
well,
not
that's good
pretty good. He's really,
well,
really
it's good to know. Well, I'm glad that you were not hunting with Dick Cheney. That was probably better.
that's actually that's actually the place where that incident happened, by the way.
Yeah. They probably have a new safety protocol there, right? The gun goes
He
this
probably
way.
didn't watch the movie nor take the guns.
He might not have.
No guns for politicians.
Yeah. So it's good that he's better at that, better of knowing when and when not to shoot. But okay, so I would like to hear from you. Tell me 3 things in your life right now that you at 25 could not have imagined would be possible for you to be doing these days and these present days. What would be 3 things that would come to mind that you would say, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do that?
Being with my family would come. And then what would precede that is working within the sphere of influence where God wants me.
Mm-hmm.
And on a professional basis, be where I am today, helping others get to where they need to go and providing different services in different areas professionally.
Nice. Okay. Well, and more, and many more, right? We wouldn't be in this room.
Oh, sure.
For sure. We
sure.
wouldn't be having these conversations. So I hope people can understand the spirit with which we're having this conversation.
It all goes back to one major decision, which was pretty significant.
And involved in those decisions was the concept of worth and value, which we're going to all be discussing here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to shift over, John, to you.
Okay.
And so John, I'm going to throw the question to you. First of all, John, talk about what I said the name Alpha Omega Leadership when I was kind of doing an introduction here.
Mhm.
What is that exactly?
That's a fantastic question.
Yes.
I think the easy answer is it is an organization that we are forming whose goal is to help folks around us improve themselves, better themselves in the way they think, the way they view themselves and the world around them, with the hope that as they improve themselves individually, that cultures change and improve within organizations, within communities and societies.
And this is a Alpha Omega has a grand vision.
We do, yeah. We were talking yesterday, and I kind of threw out, and I said it almost feels heretical, but I'd love to see the impact that we have be the same kind of impact Jesus had on the world, that he started a movement over 2,000 years ago, and that it's something that carries on and is changing lives and changing cultures to this day. Not that we're equating ourselves to him at all or the gospel, but that we want to carry the truth of who he is and what he taught and use that to impact folks
Yeah.
that outlasts us by generations.
Nice.
From the beginning to the end.
From the Alpha to the
If only we knew the Greek
I
for
like
that.
it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still trying to understand what ethos means. So
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. And we're talking about the potential of this being played out in many different arenas. We've had discussions about it in prisons and
Yeah.
corporate arenas, certainly with entrepreneurs, which we all are and certainly have a heart for.
Yeah.
By the way, as you and Dan work together, how long have you and Dan been working together?
So we met, gosh, it's been probably 15 years ago. We were both in different places. I was a youth pastor, met
Yes.
Dan. He came and was a volunteer with me for a couple of years. My life rearranged, and I reconnected with him after about 6 months of not working in the church world, and just kind of fell in with him. And not to toot his horn for him, but he just kept giving me responsibility and opportunity and
Nice.
the ability to grow and learn more. And I was able to take advantage of that. And here we are, probably a decade and a half later, and
Okay.
a wealth of knowledge and wisdom I've gained.
So at 40, Dan was operating 4 companies, correct? Did I get that number right?
I think when John and I got together, it was probably 5 or 6.
5 or
by
6.
that
6.
time. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
many today?
I think all told, we're overseeing 9 or 10 different deals.
Alpha
Yeah.
Omega Leadership being one of those.
Alpha Omega being kind of the where we're hoping our future funnels down into, really.
Yeah.
So we're in the construction space and home remodeling and green energy and automobiles, and we're kind of all over the place.
Kind of all over the place.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Yeah.
Definitely some roofing, some solar, and some other things.
Yeah.
in there.
We've also sold AKC puppies
Yeah.
at a
Well,
high level too.
there you
So-
go.
Does your home need a puppy?
Yes. Whatever it takes.
Puppies
to
are
get
actually
your
pretty
home.
easy to sell, but
All right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's do this.
'Kay.
Well, first of all, let me ask you this. Where did you grow up?
I grew up mostly in the Tampa area. I was born in Bozeman, Montana. Lived there my first year. Don't remember it a bit. 4.5 years in Denver, and then Tampa until the very end of 1999. Back to
Okay.
Denver for 5 years, and beautiful Midland, Texas.
Midland, which is
Since
where you are now. So
2005.
if someone's
Yeah.
not looking at Google Maps or never
Yeah.
been there, where in Texas is Midland?
So kind of the west side of the state,
Okay.
off I-20, halfway between Dallas and El Paso,
And El
Mexico.
Paso.
Yeah,
So if I was at Amarillo, I would drop down
you'd go due south
and go down.
about 3.5 hours or
Okay.
4 hours, depending on how heavy your shoes are.
Okay. And we and we also said that anything from there is like 2 hours away, right?
Yeah, anything you want to do. When I moved to Midland, it was, well, what do you guys do for? Oh, you can go this way about 2 hours and you'll be here. 2 hours you'll be there, and everything is 2 hours away.
Everything's 2
Yeah.
hours away. Okay. So that's a little bit of a background, and so the two of you have been working together. So let's compare your time back to your youth pastoring days.
Okay.
You were in a life of service, a life of pastoring,
Mhm.
and I'm certain that from those times, if we were discussing that, you could tell me plenty of rewards that came from those times. And I certainly haven't heard you express any regrets from those days, nor do I from
Yeah.
my days and kind of being a part of those types of things. So the question is to you now: say 3 things that are a part of your life now, available to you to do. That as a youth pastor, by the way, this is no slight on being a youth
Right.
pastor. I'm just talking about the concept of how a person's life can potentially change.
Sure. Yeah.
And so what would be 3 things that now are available to you that would not necessarily have been available to you then?
Okay. So I think the first one, I got married while I was a youth pastor.
Okay.
My wife was a volunteer in the ministry, and God put us together.
Mhm.
So that obviously opens up a wide array of life options and opportunities. I think one of the things that has always been part of my DNA and my kind of my involvement in the world is looking for ways to help people.
Okay.
And when I was a youth pastor, my salary was not very significant at all.
Okay.
But I'd look for ways where I could just let someone know God loves them. And
Yeah.
one of those ways was my wife and I go to dinner, and if we saw someone, just kind of the Holy Spirit would say, "Hey, pay for their meal."
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of times when I heard that voice and say, "Okay, I'll do that." And I'd tell the server, "Hey, give me that guy's check or whatever." And as the check's coming, I'm praying, "God, please don't let him have ordered dessert."
Yes.
So a $12, $15 meal
Yeah.
was happy and joyfully paying that,
Yes.
and then driving home going, "I hope we have enough to cover our bills for the month."
Yeah.
Flash forward to now in life. Well, just an example, we took our kids to IHOP for dinner on Christmas Eve,
Yes.
and there's a random story behind that predates the kids. But we were sitting eating dinner, and there was a table of about 8 or 10 late high school, early college
Right.
guys, and they're laughing, having a good time, not
Yeah.
being obnoxious, but just
Sure, right.
entertaining. I realized they're playing Monopoly
Yeah.
at the table, and they're kind of cracking up. So I start watching them play, and
Yeah.
I like to watch people, and I realize they've got a setup where if you land on someone's space and you should be paying rent or whatever, however the
Yeah.
game works, if you don't want to do that, the person can offer you a physical challenge instead.
Okay.
So I'm watching these guys, and they're taking shots of the syrup and these just
Yeah.
eat this whole thing of butter, that kind of
Yes.
thing. And it was very entertaining for me. So
Yeah.
as dinner's winding down for us, I grabbed the server and said, "Hey, give me their ticket." So IHOP,
Yeah.
and walked out paying almost $300
Yeah.
for dinner for my family at IHOP, and got in the truck and wasn't worried about it.
Yes.
And not from the standpoint of I'm filthy rich, but
Right,
from the
right.
standpoint of God's given me so that I can have the freedom to exercise that
Yeah. The
desire He's put in me.
Yeah, the flexibility to
Yeah,
do that,
yeah.
which you wouldn't have once had.
Yeah, had the
Y-
desire,
yeah,
didn't have the means.
You
so
wouldn't
now,
have considered that. You would have
Right.
laughed at the jokes and done all
Right,
of that, but you
exactly.
wouldn't have been grabbing the bill.
Exactly.
You'd have been looking around the restaurant for somebody else.
Yeah,
right?
who's someone looks like they
who's
don't eat
alone on
much.
Christmas time that I
Yeah,
can help?
exactly.
Yeah.
But and that's been I think one of the biggest joys for me is being able
Nice.
to be involved. And I think one of the you asked for 3. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
the third thing that kind of ties in with a mixture of those two is my wife and I have adopted 2 boys
Yeah.
within our marriage. The first one was a local adoption, and we were blessed to have some folks that really helped in that financially.
Yes.
And then, 4 years later, I guess we found ourselves in the process of adopting a boy from China,
Yeah.
which is a significantly expensive proposition.
Yes.
And again, blessed by some folks who care deeply about us and love us that
Right.
said, "Here's a big chunk of money to help make
Yeah,
that
right.
happen." Just that process of having folks around us who say, "Man, we're going to walk with you in
Yeah.
that journey." And my wife was pregnant when it came time to go to China, so she wasn't able to travel with me. So even having a friend that I could call and say, "Hey, man, you want a 2-week trip to China with me?
Right.
We're going to pick up a kid. It's going to be weird."
Right.
And a friend that said, "Yeah, I'll do that with you." So just a lot of seeing the community of friends and family really
Okay.
come around that I think has been a great opportunity.
Okay. Let me ask you, you went to China.
Yes.
Probably would have never figured you were going to China.
Not at all.
Where else in the world have you traveled that you wouldn't have been considering when you were a youth pastor?
Well, Dan and I got to go to Uganda
Okay.
early this year, I guess February of this year.
Right.
And that was a crazy fast trip, but just amazing. And yeah, definitely putting my head down the pillow at night going, man, I'm in Uganda right now.
Right.
And, and we got to do some really great stuff. I was on a Ugandan TV show, which
Nice.
who doesn't do that at some point in their life?
Yeah, right.
But coming here, sitting in this room and going to leadership conferences, being on Zoom calls with
Right.
folks that are internationally known names and
Yes.
going, this guy is sitting and he's listening to my voice. Like,
Right.
it's pretty overwhelming at times for sure.
Nice. All right, Derek. So we're on to you. You had some great stories. Actually, we right before this went out to lunch, and you were talking about something that I think is worthwhile to share. And so, first of all, Derek, how long have you been with these two guys?
I've been in the mix now for coming up on 3 months now.
3 months.
Right about 3 months.
All right. So just kind of
Still
getting
pretty
out of the gate.
fresh. Yeah.
Out of the gate. And what I know from our conversations is that you part of your background is that you spent 15 years in the oil fields,
Yes, sir.
mostly in Texas, but traveling to a few other states in that time. And you were sharing about the experiences that you had, kind of an internal growth process, right? So talk a little bit about you were kind of talking about both sides of the fence. Go back to that conversation and share about that.
Well, we were kind of visiting about what it's like to be out there in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
I had a lot of reflection time
Yeah.
when I was out there,
Okay.
drilling wells. Average time being out there anywhere from 15 to 60 days at a time.
Okay.
So a lot of internal reflection. Am I doing the right thing? Where's my life going?
Right.
Things of that nature. So what I started to look at was I made really good money,
Mhm.
but it cost me a lot of my time.
Right.
And so the trouble for me was I was always in a pickle because I could make really good money, but I had no time.
Right.
And I looked at other people that were in town
Yeah.
and friends and family and people going on trips together. And
Yeah.
my days off schedule never did jive.
Yeah.
And I wondered, what is life like being in that capacity?
Mhm.
Well, I tried to get out of that space
Mhm.
and drastically change my life, cut my income in half,
Yeah.
and go fit into there.
Yeah.
And I realized it was a very hard struggle for me because I took my money away
Yeah.
to get my time,
Yeah.
but I had no money
Right.
to do anything fun with the time that I
Right.
had.
Yeah,
So
right.
there was this stuck kind of place that I was in
Yeah.
that it didn't seem to matter which side of the fence I was on. I was constantly thinking about what's the better trade-off.
Right.
And it really became kind of a quest for me to figure out a formula
Yeah.
that would allow me to have the best of both.
Yeah. Okay. So share a little bit about what have you taken away from that? Like, what has that taught you? If you're looking for this opportunity to, whether you're a lot of time, no money, a lot of money, no time, or anywhere in between. So what is it for you that you've discovered?
I think what it's really come down to for me is instead of having drastic ends of the spectrum
Right.
and hopping from one side of the fence to the other,
Yeah.
it's been more about riding the wave and the ebb and flow of
Mhm.
everything
Mm-hmm.
and putting myself in a position to come in and out
Yeah.
where I need to
Right.
instead of being stuck on one side of the fence or the other
Mhm.
and saying, well, I can only be in this one track mindset
Mm-hmm.
for now until I break. And then I go to the other side and I have to switch over. It's a lot smoother wave now,
Right.
where it used to just be very blocky,
Right.
where I would just go out until it crashed and burned
Okay.
and then switch over and then
Yeah.
do the same thing again.
Right.
So that's really kind of what I've come to learn. And for me, it's really sort of how do I find this ebb and flow in my
Mhm.
life where I start to recognize maybe the swell's getting a little too big.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to kind of shift gears and bring it back down a little bit.
All right. So what is something you're doing every day that contributes to that ebb and flow? What is different about you now comparative to I experienced this side drastically all the way. I experienced this side all the way. I had neither one seemed to take me to the place where I want to be. What are you doing daily that is the difference maker in this ebb and flow that you're referring to?
I think the biggest, hands down, the biggest factor right now
Mm-hmm.
that's driving that change is the company around me
Okay.
with these guys.
Okay.
I haven't been able to, it was a struggle for me to find that flow
Right.
in environments that were filled with people that weren't on the same track that I was on.
Okay.
We weren't living the same lifestyle. We weren't looking, maybe they weren't looking to make an impact and help other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, really getting into what was fulfilling to me, which is being of service and giving back,
Mm-hmm.
I had to find this environment where they valued what I valued.
Yeah.
How to really find a culture and a home where we could nurture and condition what we're good at and
Yeah.
what we want to do in life
Mm-hmm.
and be walking in the same direction together.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really until I was able to find that I could really start tapping into the full potential of where all this is going.
Okay. You used a really pivotal word there, a key word. I heard you say values.
Absolutely.
It was about that, which is what we want to be discussing here in this conversation. So, Dan, when you and I got connected by Paul Martinelli, and we were talking about what is it that you are wanting to create, and what are we creating together? You started talking to me about this concept of these concentric circles, and I think that these concentric circles are not all that's sort of emerging through AO leadership, but it's at least a kind of a basis. Um, it's definitely almost like a DNA piece, perhaps. So what is that? What are these? And I said earlier, we're going to be talking about principles here. And there's probably other words we could use to describe that. But what are these? Before we know we want to talk about value and worth, and but what are these? What are the elements of these circles?
Well, as time has gone on,
Mm-hmm.
and the time, and I mentioned time, and Derek mentioned ebb and flow.
Okay.
You know, the timing of the tide coming in and the tide going out,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to realize that. I mean, the tide comes in, the tide goes out, the
Mm-hmm.
sun comes up, the sun comes down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we all grow and mature, we all start getting within this timing of life.
Yeah, kind of a rhythm, right?
Right. Or the rhythm of life as
Mm-hmm.
our understanding grows, as our maturity grows.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it basically the seasons of life throughout a year. Summer always comes after spring. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
winter never comes before summer. And so going through the different seasons in my life, as
Mm-hmm.
many of us have, we come to a greater understanding of that things are done in order in a systematic way. I mean,
Okay.
that's why there's a solar system. That's why there's an ecosystem. So as we started looking, as I started thinking and really just started really paying attention to what was going on in my life,
Mm-hmm.
I started noticing more how things work in a systematic way.
Okay.
And so you mentioned the concentric circles. As I started really looking at the real important things, really defining what was it that I really wanted, and I believe it was more divine,
Okay.
that as I really started thinking and studying, and I really found most of my enlightenments was just through journaling,
Okay.
daily and weekly, and every now and then I'd miss a day, but
Right.
just reading and then journaling what I thought,
Mhm.
and not really paying attention to how I was writing, because I'm a real messy writer. I have to have 4 interpreters when I write. But yeah, John's laughing. He's not laughing when I give him my stuff. But as I really got to writing, I really noticed that everything went back to what I would call values, and we've heard that word a lot.
Mhm.
Values. I've heard people go, well, we just want to add value to you, and
Right.
I've always kind of scratched my head with that. But as I really started really breaking down the word, I discovered a few things that we can discuss in a minute. But I realized really what's important to me,
Mhm.
and really as I start breaking down what I will term as values before
Mhm.
we even really break that word down and the meaning of it, whatever you value, it really forms the way how you believe about life in general,
Okay.
about people around you,
Yeah.
and your values really determine the way how you begin to think and perceive things.
Okay.
So if you have good values, good beliefs, good thoughts,
Mhm.
and they go back and forth with your emotional state and
Okay.
with your self-evaluation, but in generality, it goes from values, beliefs, thoughts, and then the way how you think is why you act out some of the things that you do,
Okay.
good or bad,
Right.
foolishness or goodness. But then you get a result, and
Mhm.
then some people it becomes habitual.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can evaluate it and you make some changes, or you don't. But from your values to what you believe, to the way how you think, the way
Mhm.
you act, you get a result, and then it turns into your future. I mean, I'm a direct reflection on the values that has led up to this point in my life,
Yeah.
even from the very early time. And then there was some mistakes that were made that got evaluated, changed, and so my
Mhm.
values changed. But it got me up to the direct results, and I'm living in yesterday's future. Tomorrow will be tomorrow's future.
Right.
But then it got pretty deep. I mean, and I'm a man of faith, but
Yeah.
I believe that everything that we do has eternal significance.
Okay.
So everything, good or bad, has an eternal impact on what goes on in the rest of the world.
Okay.
And you've heard it said, I think you and I spoke about a little bit yesterday, that you and I both have the ability to make people's day better,
Yeah.
or we have the ability to make people's day worse,
Right.
just by a matter of influence and
Yeah.
and our attitude and everything else.
So you were coming to understand this just in the same way that you understood that there are these seasons in life that you go through, that you started to get more in touch with sort of the rhythms of the way things go. You see these patterns play out over and over again, and this idea of so let's see, from values to beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
from beliefs to thoughts, from thoughts to emotions, from emotions to action, and then from action to result. And that is what's really determining our future,
Mm-hmm.
present and our future, right?
Right. Well, and if you don't think and plan
Mm-hmm.
through evaluated experience
Mm-hmm.
based on results, it's really going to hard to know where your future is going to be. And I see a big break where I never really thought a whole lot. I kind of just, well, whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then my life ended up crashed on the rocks in
Yeah.
despair. And then I'd go, well, how did I get here?
Right.
Well, then through being honest with myself,
Mm-hmm.
not trying to say, I'll just try it again. I
Right.
really had to start going back in my maturity and really start analyzing that.
Mm-hmm.
So now I call it vision and planning.
Yeah.
Through experience of repeating better decisions,
Right.
I have less regrets. And so I try to project where I want to go
Mm-hmm.
instead of ending up crashed on the rocks in an undesired place where that I never intended to go. I've learned to master the wind a little bit better.
Okay.
I'm not an expert totally, but
Right.
I've learned to master the wind in the direction that it wants me to blow.
And these principles or these concepts that you're discussing here, you're interacting with these kind of in the laboratory of your life, right? So we talked about you went from running 4 businesses at 40 and now there's 9. I know you've had more or less over time, but more than one. And for most people, one business is a massive change in life, going from being an employee for somebody else to owning one business, and you've got 9 of them. And so you have been working these things out, and you are working these things out in sort of the laboratory of your business is the laboratory of your life, correct?
And by working, I think I've learned to start trusting myself,
Mm-hmm.
predicated on the foundation of who I am and whose I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned to trust myself and my decision making. And
Okay.
when I quickly make a mistake, I can't blame you, can't blame anybody, because I've made these decisions from the eternal defining characteristics that have changed in my life, if that makes sense.
So are you when you're making decisions, are you paying attention to that your decisions are connected to your values?
Yes. And then I through a trusted accountability group that I've come to know, and I've got both of them here,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very transparent.
Okay.
I mean, if you're going to come in with muddied water, it's never going to be clear.
Right.
So if you come in trying to hide something, they'll never get the clear picture. So thus you'll have a distorted feedback,
Mm-hmm.
which will feed your ego or which will destroy theirs. So just my philosophy only in the way
Mhm.
how I perceive things, I try to lead with trust. Whether if
Okay.
it's me hiring somebody, regardless of what's been said, I try to lead with goodness, gratitude, and with trust. And I think with those core values that I've
Mhm.
learned in my life,
Okay.
by projecting those forward and positively implementing those,
Yeah.
I think great things happen when positive things are implemented into your life. And so good results. And just another kind of description, it's real simple. Whatever you plant, it's going to grow back. So
Okay.
if you plant bad values like deceptive behavior, bad morals, bad ethics,
Mm-hmm.
from lying, stealing, and the big 10,
Mm-hmm.
those are going to grow back in a negative way, and you will reap calamity, and
Okay.
good things won't happen.
Okay. You said this 2-word phrase, core values,
Hmm.
which I think is a common phrase. People have heard this, right?
Mhm.
Many people have heard that idea. What are your core values?
Well, that's a good question, and they really don't change.
Okay.
They kind of go in and out depending on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the core values that I have is one is love.
Okay.
Is love, and we can go to love of family, love of self, love
Okay.
of God. And so, do I appreciate others, and do I appreciate their time? Do I appreciate what they bring to the table? Is there respect? So, the foundation is on love, and
Mm-hmm.
with being a man of faith, my core value is all built on what God has already established from the very beginning.
Okay.
Um, but on the human level, I like to go back to the core of love,
Okay.
and honest and transparent
Okay.
and hardworking and diligent. And
Okay.
so it's almost like you end up opening up a bag, and all these good things are in there.
Okay. So,
And I used to have a bag of bad things,
right.
from lying, stealing,
Mm-hmm.
doing all types of crazy, crazy things. I prefer not to go into it this time.
Yeah. Okay.
But they've been replaced.
Right. Right. So, is it possible that you had the value of love even when you said I was doing these quote unquote bad things, right? Uh, is it possible that somewhere in you valued love at that time, like it was really central to who you are, like I really care?
I think love was in there all the time.
Okay. Okay.
But the definition of what love was all focused on me, me,
Okay.
me, me, me.
Mm-hmm.
So my definition of love now is um, giving, loving without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And as I got into where I started being responsible for my own choices, it got to be loving myself, and I'm going to use it as a manipulation tool.
Okay.
And that way I could use it against you to get something back in return that I didn't really deserve. And then through guilt and shame, I would use all the different tools that I could to.
Okay.
So I'd use love as a manipulation by either giving it to get back or by withholding love to get.
So the object of your love was you,
Of course.
and the recipient of your love was you.
Of course.
And when you were giving what looked like love to other people, you were really the final recipient of the love.
Of course.
Oh, and so that, but clearly you were valuing love. Your expression of your value of love was very much centered around you.
Hmm. Well, I can remember days when my valuation of love would be what I called love. It really wasn't. It was lust. A
Right,
lot of it.
okay, yeah,
Lust of
sure.
my own flesh, me wanting what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it with whomever I wanted to do it with, and
Mhm.
even to the point of paying money for quote unquote lust, love.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so by that, that really wasn't a definition of what the true solid
Sure.
definition of what love is.
So
It was trying to buy love, and the genuine love is love right now. It's significant, and it can't be there is no monetary value that you can place on love.
Okay.
So and that kind of goes into what worth is and determining what value versus worth is.
Okay.
Worth has to do more with monetary, a specific item which you can pay something for in
Okay.
cash.
Mhm.
Value is you really can't place a monetary value on it because it's set so high up and it's significant that there is no money that could buy. I mean, do you value your breath? Can I pay you for your breath?
Mhm.
So which is better? Do you value your breath, or is it worth? So that's why I kind of look at it as two different things.
Okay. Okay.
Did I explain that okay?
Yeah, you did. I
okay.
think that I am listening. I'm going to say what I'm about to say will maybe seem like I wasn't listening. I was catching all of that. But there's a thought that you were saying early on in that about where you were in terms of your expressions of love, and it seems like what what is clear in your life now is your core value of love has been redeemed.
Yeah, very well put.
Right. In other words, what once you were using for something that wasn't really actually beneficial to you ultimately, right? Short term benefit, but very, very temporary.
Mhm.
And, I'm going to say perhaps never satiated, like you were never satisfied with what you were getting. Is that
Yeah, it
accurate?
was like an empty void that you're
Yeah.
trying to fill. That you
Yeah.
can never
Okay.
fill,
And can't do it, right?
Yeah, just can't do it.
Uh,
But yet you pursue it with everything you have, and you
Sure.
still come up empty.
Could you say honestly that today, if you are living out your core value of love, that there is an end, meaning that you do experience some kind of meaning, satisfaction, purpose, fulfillment? Do you experience that today when you
I call it completeness. I call it
Completeness.
full roundedness.
Okay.
Big difference between joy and happiness. Happiness is based on what's happening.
Right.
Have you ever been happy? Sure, but then you take away that thing or something bad happens. It's based
interesting.
on happenings.
Right, right.
Where joy comes from within,
Okay.
and regardless of the good or bad, there's still a joyful change that you express inwardly first, and then outwardly. Happiness is pretty much just experienced outwardly. They're both experienced outwardly, but one is very temporal based on what's going on around you.
Okay.
And joy comes from within. And I really believe you really don't earn joy. You have to end up learning to grow into it. And it's actually a gift from, being a man of faith. I would call that from only what Jesus Christ can do.
Okay.
Joy.
All right. So let's test love a little bit. This
Okay.
value of love. I'm going to ask Derek. Derek, you've been 3 months involved in this company, these companies, and these endeavors. Have you watched the value of love be expressed through the company?
Absolutely.
Okay, give me a specific example. Like when was the last time you could say, yeah, I saw it there?
Well, I'm here on this trip for
Okay.
one. So
Okay. All right. All right.
Fried bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You weren't going to grab an airplane ticket and come here and do that on your own, right? That wasn't something that you were going to do, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, we didn't know each other before this trip. We just met, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so are you saying that because of love, someone else helped that happen? Is that partly what you're saying?
Absolutely.
What else are you saying? What am I missing that you're saying in that?
What I've seen in my time with these guys is a desire to take what I can really just define as love
Okay.
in the form of making everybody that's involved with the companies
Yeah.
better people.
Okay.
And the way that happens, usually daily, weekly
Right.
for sure,
Right. Yeah.
is a lot of resources and time and energy going back into people,
Okay.
a slowing down of the schedules and the levels of living to pour back into people in a way that would help them see life in a way that they could get to a similar place.
Okay. Do you feel like you being on this trip right now is someone else making an investment in you and in your betterment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you weren't on this trip, would there be work for you to be doing? In other words, was there plenty to do? And what I'm getting at is, we've all been talking about how valuable it's been to pause all of the activity.
Oh yeah.
9 companies is a lot of activity. Could you have been, in the time you've been on this trip, was there activity you could have been doing within the company?
For sure.
Out-
There's a everybody's got a to-do list that it's piling up by the second. that
Right.
we're-
Right.
But like you said, we have to stop and make that time to move the ball forward and where we want to go.
Yeah.
There's always other things for us to be doing at the house and inside of the other things that we have going.
Mm.
9 companies. It's all day, every day. It's
All
all
day.
hands on deck. So
What do you suspect could have changed about this equation of you being on this trip, being invested in? What might have been different if love wasn't involved in the equation?
I don't feel that there would be a need for me to be here if that were the case. These guys can do this stuff without my help. They have the resources and the means to travel freely and train and take mentorship from people that are in a higher place than I am.
Right.
So if they didn't have that for me,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to put back into me if that wasn't in the equation.
Do you suspect that because of this experience, something is being up-leveled in you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think those things are the kind of things we need time to reflect on, right? In other words, there's probably something you could point to now, but I bet if I asked you that question in 24 hours, you might even have something else, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your heart, and I definitely appreciate you sharing that. John, let me ask you this. Give me like an archetype customer, meaning what would be if I was thinking about your target market. Now, I'm not talking about AO leadership. Let me take the roofing business. Give me a target market for the roofing. Like, you can be as general or specific as you want to be. Who is your target for that?
Anyone who needs roof work done. someone with a pot.
That was easy.
Yeah,
That was easy.
It's all right. I would say primarily in our industry, it's dealing with hail damage, hailstorm damage. We have a lot of hailstorms where we live.
You're
so
in the tornado alley.
man, we've got I think we had within a 2-week span had 3 hailstorms hit our town, and none of them were massive, but they each did damage to homes. And
I know some roofers who want to move to your area now.
yeah, come on.
Do
It's a
they
great
want to buy a
time.
roofing company?
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. So mostly or exclusively, which is it? Commercial or residential?
Primary
Both?
residential.
Primarily residential. So we're talking about homeowners,
Yep. Talking
Okay.
about families. Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
All right. Could you say, I'm going to ask you, this is going to be a 2-part question.
Bring it.
First is going to be yes or no. Could you say that a family could point to me and tell me that there's been an expression of love to their family through your company?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if what you suspect would be an example that someone might give, a real world example
Okay.
that one
yeah.
of your recent customers might
I've got
give?
one. Yeah. So, had a call from a guy who his personal assistant is friends with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know him at all. He called and said, my mom's house got hit by hail. We need help. So I went over. Mom is widowed, I think, 2 years ago. And so she's living by herself in the home that her and her husband shared for 25 or something years. And she's up in her years, and
Okay.
health is failing. She still gets around. And her son, who is, he's an older guy as well. He just said, I just need to make sure that my mom's taken care of. And,
Yeah.
there's kind of probably, people people have assumptions about roofing and roofers and salesmen and all those things.
And
And
probably not happy ones, right?
yeah, typically not
Yeah.
shining, glowing
Right, yeah,
examples.
right.
You know, the roofing industry, it's not a bunch of doctorates and MBAs
Yeah,
coming out to put
yeah.
shingles on. So there's kind of some just stereotypes
Yeah,
that
sure.
that we have to overcome. So and one of the things I've done, every roofing customer I look at, and especially folks who are older, who are getting toward my parents' age and above
Mhm.
that, I look and go, if this was my parents' house and some guy came and was going to replace the roof for my parents, how would I want him to treat them?
Right, right.
And I really do try to approach folks that way.
Yeah.
So with this lady, she had some just kind of some other random things, and I was helping her get some other things taken care of within the home that weren't necessarily tied to my job at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they have kind of a little patio space that her husband had made these plexiglass plates that slid in
Mm-hmm.
so she could sit out there even when it's raining. Both days a year it rains in Midland. She could sit out there and enjoy. And in the process of the roofing stuff, they got kind of dirty, got some stuff on them.
Okay.
So I was over there waiting to meet a guy to look at a project and just said, man, I'm sitting here. These things are dirty. And I pulled them out and cleaned them off and put them back in. And
Mm-hmm.
it took maybe 15 minutes, not a
Right.
big deal. Well, her son, Mike, called me that evening. And I answered the phone. He's just a super nice guy. And he said, I'm pretty upset with you. And I thought, man, what in the world is going on? Yeah. Yeah. I'm going, what in the world? So he says, I just talked to Mom. She said, you were over the house this morning and you cleaned that sunroom setup. And I said, yes, sir. And I'm thinking, did something happen? Did I
Right.
break something? You know? And he goes, I can't figure out if you're being nice or if you're trying to horn in on my will. And I kind of just started, and so we started laughing, but just a guy who, and he was very, thankful and gracious and kind to me as a person, and just expressed over and over how grateful he was for me just being kind to his mom,
Right.
and for making that process that initially was full of anxiety and fear and doubt, questions, and just going,
yeah,
it's all smooth. We can
If you
take
saw
care of
it
it.
at your mom's house, you would have done that for your mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd hope that any of the guys that work with us would have done the same. And I think I can say with pretty strong confidence they do. We all
Okay.
kind of approach the folks that way.
Nice. So, Dan, do you think where outside of your company are you, through your company, expressing or showing your value of love?
Yes. I mean, so one of the questions I ask myself is, we hear quite often, we want to add value to you. And
Right.
I've often scratched my head, and I've actually had conversations with John, really what that means. And I really believe the way how I can help add value to
Mhm.
people's life. There's a book I read, and it talks about love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, self-control. Um, I believe those are the ways that we can add value to people by kindness,
Okay.
by me lending you or giving you my strength and not exploiting your weakness, by patience, by me being patient with you, knowing where you are, realizing where you are, and me slowing down my pace, my race to succeed.
Right, right.
I slow down and I match my pace with your pace to
Hmm.
try to help. And we've already talked about love. We talked a little bit about joy, but it's also about me sharing time with you, about
Mhm.
respecting your time, by actually listening with you,
Yeah.
and by through listening, not so much me trying to focus on me trying to teach you something, but me try to ask good questions and try to uh, bring up these questions to get you to think
Right.
for yourself and to start creating. Kind of going back with what Derek said, and I appreciate what Derek said here, and also what you said too, John. But I'm just going to use a simple term. I look at a farmer. The farmer in the winter, when the harvest is over, I'm sure that most farmers celebrate that they had a great harvest and they've collected some money. But the farmer just doesn't sit there all winter just celebrating and counting his stack of money. The
Mhm.
farmer's out there repairing his equipment. Even before he needs it, he's out there preparing his equipment, He's maybe buying new equipment, investing, making calculated decisions. He's also looking at the seed he's going to plant. I would doubt if they've had a good year that a farmer is going to go invest in some cheap seed, some good seed that won't produce, that there's a risk. So I think even before the next season approaches, the best way how I can add value to my team, which is love,
Mm-hmm.
that I make the necessary preparations before they even think about it.
Okay.
So I think that with responsibility, I should be able to see further and see faster,
Mm-hmm.
and be a little bit wiser. And through, of course, God's blessing and prayer, giving it all back to Him. But I need to prepare the seed and what's coming in the future. And through that act of kindness, of being willing instead of staying home, doing all kinds of other things,
Mm-hmm.
I'll let the other guys, you go enjoy your home
Right,
life,
right.
but I can't afford that with the limited amount of time I've got left.
Okay.
So I've got to cast my vision.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to be able to willing to already go. I've got to be where I'm wanting to go.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for me to take people there, I need to have already been. Then I got to come basically back down to take them with me as I go.
Okay. So
It was that kind of a crazy way of putting.
yeah. Okay. So let's break that down
said
just a
yeah.
little bit.
Sorry.
Okay. So part of what
But that's why how I display love. It's
Right.
not so much, oh, here, let me give you a hug and give you a
Right.
butt slap. Attaboy, good job.
Yeah. Right.
It's by me sacrificing my time when other people are out laying around.
Right.
I'm up going up ahead of them,
Okay.
preparing for where we
Okay,
need to go
good, yeah.
next year.
Yeah. Yeah. When you could have many other opportunities and things you
Sure.
could be doing, and
Sure.
and you have the means to do them. In other words, if you wanted to go,
Sure.
dude, you there's nothing else that would be stopping you
Mhm.
except that love is influencing you to invest your time in other people to prepare, because I think that was the key word you
Sure.
said, right?
Sure. And see, a large part of that too, Rick, is I'm not trying to be successful anymore.
Right,
So
okay.
success is a product of hard work and what I can do for myself.
Okay.
And but as I've grown and mature,
Mhm.
and success happens with hard work. If you can, define what success is. So there's multi different levels of success
Right. Okay.
that is normally characterized by money,
Yeah.
which is worth.
Right,
Well,
right.
if we're going to talk about value,
Mhm.
well, it moves over to a part of being significant. Well, how am I going to leave a legacy if I don't put any legs to anything?
Yeah.
So, how can I be significant? The definition of significance to me is what can I do for other people?
Okay.
And being significant is the people around me the most love me the most, and that I love them the most.
Okay, so so it seems like, in part at least, a definition. You said success is like you doing well.
Yeah, that I'm succeeding in these areas,
Yeah.
but who determines what part of the mountain you're on?
Yeah.
I mean,
So significance, at least in part, your definition would be helping other people be successful.
helping other people's success is me comparing my life to somebody else and thinking I'm better or lower than
Uh-huh.
them. So that's what determines success.
Okay, and even comparing me to me yesterday could be a part of that, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All
Can
right.
I interject something?
Yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah.
So having been with Dan for, like I said, about 15 years now,
Right.
and even 10 years ago, going, there's no reason that he needs to be coming into the office or doing any of this or hiring me or these other people. He could shut it all down,
Mm-hmm.
sell the companies, and go
Right off into
live
sunset.
wherever he wanted
Yeah.
to and do
Mhm.
whatever he wanted. And as a result of his hard work and sweat running down his back
Yeah.
from the time the sun comes up,
Yeah.
and investing himself in himself. And the phrase that he said, and he doesn't run around and broadcast, but he and I have been able to just sit and have close conversation
Mhm.
more than most folks. And a phrase he said is, I don't have to be doing this, but
Mhm.
I'm glad I'm doing it because of what it's going to do for you and for your family.
Right.
And I've got 4 kids at home, and I look and go, their future is cliche brighter, is better and stronger and has more potential and more opportunity
Mm-hmm.
because Dan slowed down for me.
Yeah.
And it's not a theory or he talks a good game, but it's something. I mean, We could spend an hour and I could list out, man, because of Dan and his obedience,
Mm-hmm.
my family has, or I have, or I have the opportunity to, or I had the opportunity
Yeah.
to. So it's not, I want to stress that because it's not like, it's not just words.
Right.
It's something that, you asked Derek, how have you seen this love play out?
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that in my own life, and I can
Mhm.
say that in lives of folks, man, all around us.
Yeah.
So,
So I could ask anyone involved in the companies. I could say, "What does it feel like to be loved inside of this company?" And they could give me an example.
yeah, and some of that love, the wise man who ever lived said, the father who loves his son disciplines his son,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an element of that where
Yeah.
sometimes the love isn't uh, hugs and giggling.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that stung,
Yeah.
but I
Right.
needed that correction.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I think, uh, anyone around will be able to say,
Okay.
I don't doubt
Yeah.
that Dan's operating out of a place of love.
Okay. So as we've been in these conversations, we at least the three of us have probably heard, and I'm not suggesting that you don't, but I just know that it was the three of us having the conversations, and we've probably heard several different teachings on value. I would be curious. I'm not looking for an answer in this moment, but I would be curious to know how you figured out love was a core value for you. Was there a formalized process, or was it more experiential and it's just you sort of realized it? But we've been at least in some formalized ways of being involved in some trainings about values. I certainly, as a part of what I uh, do help people get very clear on their values, both personally and for their business, and have some ways to do that in people and companies that I'm working with. But as we were talking, one of the distinctions that I think you actually were the first one to bring up in the conversations was, look, we want to talk about values, and Dan said this earlier, but we want to also talk about valuing yourself. Like it's in other words, the word worth was the word that you used, right? Um, so let's talk about just collectively that word worth. So in other words, if we're saying there's a lot of power. Let me use the word power. There's a lot of power in getting clear on your values. What is at the core of who I am? What is it that I value? And I think there's a recognition that, Derek, what is at the core of what you value may be different than we may share some of those values, but we may have different ones as well. And there's a pretty good list of possibilities of what could be at our core of what we really value. I think a simple example of that would be maybe you're a person that really values being on time.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I am not a person that values being on time, right? If you are and I'm not, you're probably going to demonstrate that by being 5 minutes early or 15 to everything. And I'm probably going to demonstrate that by being 5 or 15 minutes late to things.
And
right?
wrong, yeah.
Yeah, right. And being wrong.
Jacked up.
Yeah, jacked up. Well, and we're placing a value, and it comes from somewhere in our core, somewhere.
Yeah.
I like to think of this concept of like our values are like our spiritual DNA. Like they're at the very center. They're sort of surrounding us as a spiritual person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I think that there's plenty that we could be talking about and continue this conversation about values, but let's shift it a little bit and talk about worth. So, since you were the first one to bring it up in the conversations, what were you going for when you brought that up? When you said, "Hey, we need to interject this. This is an important piece." So, what's behind that? Why is in this sort of understanding of the way things work, the understanding? So, we talked about values, beliefs, thoughts, emotions, actions, and results, and where our future is going. Um, why in this part of this, in these concentric circles, if we're suggesting that at the center of the circle is values, why is worth such an integral part of that conversation?
Yeah. I think it is important because I think it takes maybe even a step deeper into the why behind all of it.
Okay.
So if I view myself as important, as significant,
Mm-hmm.
as valuable, as having something to contribute and something to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
something I've been uniquely made to produce
Right.
in society. If I view myself that way, that's going to shape my values, because I'm going to look through that lens and see, okay, well, what things are going to be important to discover that thing that I'm supposed to be contributing to society,
Mm-hmm.
and how do I express that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and what tools do I need to do that? Conversely, if I look and go, I'm a worthless piece of garbage and I've
Mhm.
got nothing to offer anyone,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to shape my values in how I give and receive love. If that's important to me, if honesty is important to me,
Mhm.
if having good character, if being diligent, all these different values get shaped by how I see myself. And
Mhm.
also the way I see myself, I think helps to inform how I see people around me. Everyone knows the kind of generic tropes about like the girl who grew up with daddy issues and now she's out trying to find
Right.
love from a man the only
Yeah.
way
Right.
she can think of, and men who grew up where dad wasn't a part of their life, and
Mhm.
how they approach that, so that valuing of self,
Okay.
and I don't think that's found in creating that, but I think it's found in understanding and
Ah.
receiving what that is. And I think there's a big difference there.
Mm.
There's the Apostle Paul wrote that every human being, his term is God's workmanship, and what that word
Mm.
workmanship means is masterpiece.
Right. Yeah.
So you kind of look at all of creation and some amazing things. Being here in Greenville and
Mhm.
seeing huge trees and seeing Paris Mountain, and seeing just green everywhere, and we
Yeah.
go, and God's amazing. We saw a rainbow yesterday
Yeah.
leaving,
It's
right?
cool.
And
Yeah.
I mean, you about wrecked the truck going,
Yeah. I
dude, look
did.
at that.
I did.
It's
I
beautiful.
was all geeked out about rainbows and helicopters.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
You and my daughter.
Yeah.
So, but to look at all that, and then God says, I made all that,
Yeah.
but my masterpiece, the greatest thing I made,
Yeah.
is people.
Huh.
So if I hear that and say, well, if God's masterpiece is people and
Yeah.
I'm a people,
Yeah.
which is great grammar, then I'm his masterpiece, which that gives me worth in the same sense the Mona Lisa has worth,
Mm.
because it's a masterpiece.
So, do you think that it's possible for a person to, first of all, I think we could all say it's very possible for a person not to understand that at all,
Sure.
not to have any connection at all.
Sure.
Do you think it's possible for a person to go really deep and gain a lot of clarity about their values without understanding their value, their self-worth?
I think it would be very challenging.
Okay.
And let me say this. So, kind of a little more of my background that shapes obviously who I am and what
Yeah,
I
right.
believe now. Both of my grandfathers were pastors. My
Mhm.
father was a pastor. I've been a pastor, and even as an adult, one of the real struggles I had was really believing and accepting that I could be truly loved
Hmm.
by my Creator.
Right.
And we were talking the other night, and my story is a lot different than Dan's.
Sure.
I wasn't I never was the hooligan. There's the cliche about a pastor's kid and they're so awful, and all this stuff, and I never had time to do that. I was too busy at church
Right. Right.
to go be a hooligan. So it made it really easy for me to look at other people and go, man, you're a real mess. I'm glad I'm not like you. And, kind of allow my struggle to be pride,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of and judging other folks. And that was hard. That was a real struggle for me. But I also know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what goes on between my ears.
Right.
And I know what goes on in my heart.
Mhm.
And I can look at that and go, man, if these people knew who I really, really am,
Yeah.
they wouldn't love me.
So let's imagine to kind of put a word picture on that.
Yeah.
When you say, if these people knew who I really am, if I went a day in this thinking and I had some kind of megaphone on my forehead that broadcast every thought that went through my mind,
Yeah.
people might run and hide, right?
No might. Yeah, it'd be in full transparency. When I'm driving,
Yeah. It might be louder.
it it's an amazing thing. Everyone who drives around me, they don't understand that they're impeding my race.
Oh yeah.
I've got to get there faster
It's like
first.
Frogger. They're in the
Yeah,
way.
just
Yeah, yeah.
and they are intentionally and willfully destroying my day just
Oh,
by their very
That's
existence.
what they got up for.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my wife doesn't understand. She thinks I'm crazy for thinking, but
Someday she'll figure it
yeah,
out.
but no, you're right. I talked with someone the other day and said, if there was a device that I could put on you, and it would play every deep dark secret, everything of your entire life on a screen,
Yeah.
and I told you I'll give you $10 million if you'll let me do this,
Yeah.
I don't think a human being on earth would say I'll do it.
Yeah. Right.
'Cause we all
I'd
know-
be living in a hole somewhere after that.
Yeah,
right?
we all know who we are and what's in us.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's part of that battle, that struggle of understanding our worth and value
Yeah.
is being able to say, man, but I know what's going on in here.
Right. Right.
So how could I really legitimately have value? And it's a battle. It's a spiritual battle.
Mm-hmm.
We're a body and a soul and a spirit
Mhm.
functioning together. And
Right.
there's always that tension and war going on.
Okay.
So having to be able to say, I know the worst about me,
Yeah.
but there's also this truth here that says I am valued
Right.
because I am a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to reconcile those, maybe that might be not the right word, but trying to say, I'm not going to pretend this isn't true of me, but this isn't my identity.
Okay.
My identity is over here as a masterpiece, as the adopted child of the King.
Right.
And that establishes, that verifies
Mm-hmm.
my value. So then it frees me to go, well, I can love him because I don't have to worry about what he thinks about me. Because if he thinks I'm an idiot,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm still a masterpiece and I know that, and I'm still loved and I know that.
Yeah. So I suppose what you're saying is that if he has a measuring stick, it may show you coming up short in some way.
Sure.
If you had a measuring stick, you might show me coming up short, but God has a different measuring stick.
Yeah. Yep. Wise man once said, when we compare ourselves with ourselves, we
Mhm.
deceive ourselves.
Mm.
So
Ooh,
if
that's a
we're
good one.
always playing the comparison game,
Yeah.
if I decide in my mind, well, I got to be Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not Dan.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to be Dan. And if I try to be Dan, then that means I'm not being who God made me to be.
Hmm.
If I'm trying to be the Mona Lisa
Yeah.
and I'm supposed to be the David,
Yeah.
then I'm failing in two ways, right? And I think that's, it's a battle, again,
Okay. So
human race.
okay, I'm going to see if this feels right to you. A moments ago, I asked Derek, can you see an example of the value of love being demonstrated in the company?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful example. So in a way, that's proof, right?
Yeah.
There's proof. So we could take our values and we could prove them. In other words, we could go out and show that. In a way, we could probably say we earn our right to claim that as a value, right?
Okay.
In other
yeah.
words, if Dan said here, I understand my core value is love, and you both started squirming in your seats, and I asked Derek, how do you see that? And he's like, I don't know what this guy's talking about.
Right.
It's anything but love, right?
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a company where you could say if they told you their value was love, you'd be like, no, it's not. I don't see it anywhere.
90% of all the companies I've been a part
Yeah.
of.
What about you? You ever been anywhere where they talk about love? And
I
didn't
sure
show it?
have in some places where it should have been
Love was supposed to be the business, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to throw this in too,
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
to tie
Go
that in.
Yeah,
I think a lot of that is a key word to kind of the concept of John was going with it is the driver
Yeah. Right.
behind the value.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think where we are finding the difference in places that may not embody that
Yeah.
is what is their driver?
Yeah.
And who or what are they trying to emulate
Right.
in that value
That's a
structure?
good question. Yeah.
And so the difference I've seen is there's a very different trajectory for leadership, companies, individuals
Right.
whose core drivers, which are their motivations that become their values,
Mm-hmm.
are not inclusive of some of these true concepts.
Right.
They're not driving their intentions from that place.
Right. Right.
Versus people who are striving to embody those actual values. And that's where I
Yeah.
see the difference.
Yeah. So some companies might have gone through an exercise and said, okay, our core values are integrity, right? Which is a good core value.
Sure.
And by the way, it's interesting because as many times as I've gone through these exercises with people, integrity is probably the most common one that people come up with.
Mhm.
And I'm glad they do. I think it's a great one. But some people do that and then, well, we wrote it on the wall and,
Yep.
put it on our website, but
Yep.
that's about it. Okay. So, but we could prove that. And what you're talking about is you grew up as a pastor's kid, the son of a pastor, right?
Yeah. Son of a, yeah.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I got the first few words. So you grew up in that, and you at least, it would seem on the surface that you, among many people, would have the opportunity to understand this idea of worth.
Yeah.
And yet you understood at some point, wow, I do not really feel connected to my worth.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out two things here. It seems like that, first of all, values could be earned. In other words, we could earn them, and by proving them, we could show that we are really serious about these values. I think worth could be proven, but it seems to me that worth needs to be accepted before it's earned.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't think there's a before it's earned.
Okay.
I don't think our worth can be earned.
Okay.
So, but definitely it has to be accepted.
Okay.
And it's got to be I can't force you to grasp this concept of, man, you have value because you have value.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I've got a good friend that he one time, we were doing a Bible study at a halfway house.
Yeah.
So a room full of men who have been through the state correctional system and pretty serious offenses.
Yeah.
And we're sitting and we're going through this Bible study, and Justin just looks up and he says, "You guys realize that God could not love you anymore? Like, he's capped out on his love for you." And I thought, "Ooh, is that really what we want to be saying?"
Ouch.
Yeah, yeah. And
What are you talking about?
it took me a
Ouch.
second.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Hear what I'm saying? It's because his love for you is infinite. So
Yeah.
there's no limit on it. So
Yeah.
there's nothing where you can say, well, I could maybe love you one more increment,
Right.
because he's already maxed out. It's full and complete."
Mm.
And to say that to a bunch of guys, and there are tears in these men's eyes,
Right.
and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know there were men walking out of that room going, "Yeah, but not me."
That's
And-
it, isn't it?
And that's always the struggle is, and it comes back to comparison. Well, but he doesn't know what I did. If he knew, one of the guys that was there is an older guy and sweet as could be.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting talking one night, and he said, "John, if you knew who I was before, if you
Mhm.
knew what I had done, if you were to read my rap sheet,
Right.
you wouldn't be in the same building with me. You wouldn't let me within 100 yards of you."
Hmm.
And I said, "Maybe.
Yeah.
But I know who God says you are.
Right.
And I know the worth that he has established for you."
Hmm.
And that I wish there was a drink this potion and then you'll have it.
Right.
Drink the Celsius sparkling energy
Yeah.
drink.
Well, people are
Please
trying
be a
these days
sponsor.
with ayahuasca. I keep
Well,
hearing
yeah.
a lot about it.
Yeah. or the microdose, whatever the
Yeah, right,
stuff.
right.
But if I wish there was some way that you just say, "Man, absorb this.
Yeah, right.
Let me inject you. Let me shoot you up in the arm, and you're going to have it. You're going to get it." And there's just not. It's a matter of going. We present and we demonstrate and we show, and we let our actions speak louder than our words, and go, please get it.
Mm.
And when you see someone who gets it, they go, how did I?
Mm.
I mean, it's a life-changing, peel back the curtain, take off the blinders.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like we were talking earlier, it opens up flexibility and possibility and option
Hmm.
that they didn't know was possible.
Yeah, and I think we have to then let go of the idea that it could be earned,
Right.
because if it could be earned, it could be lost.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. If I can just do enough. I had a good friend who was a pastor years ago. He went to Korea, South
Mhm.
Korea. Spent 10 days there traveling around, meeting with pastors there, preaching and stuff. And
Right.
they were walking through town one day and they come upon this some sort of temple shrine,
Yeah.
something. So there's a guy there and he's a monk. And he stands up and raises his hands in front of this shrine. And then he kneels down, lays his face in the dirt. And he stands up, raises his hands, and he kneels down, lays his face in the dirt over and over. And my pastor said to his guide, he said, what's going on here? Help me understand this. Guy said this monk committed to for 1,000 days. He was going to every day do that, sun up to sundown.
Mm-hmm.
And his hope was that that would be enough of an activity to where his God would affirm him and accept him,
You would earn it.
that he would earn it.
Yeah.
And my pastor said, what happens if he wakes up on day 1001 and says, I did my 1,000 days? Was it enough?
You're right.
And it's all in vain.
Mm.
Because if we're trying to earn it, we're never going to get there.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be that fear. Was it enough? Was it enough? Was it enough?
Mm-hmm.
And instead we go, if I want to give you my Apple Pencil,
Yeah.
what do you got to do?
You got to take it.
Got to receive it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So there's a different kind of economy there, and that isn't there.
Definitely.
Okay. So let me ask you this: have your kids? You got 4 kids.
4 kids.
Is there any of them who haven't disappointed you?
No.
No, they've all disappointed you, right?
Yeah.
Does their disappointing you lower their worth to you in your eyes?
It increases it.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
really does.
So I think there's something about like sort of getting a father's heart, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something in there. It's kind of like, sorry. It's kind of like ownership, right?
Yeah.
In other words, I think it's getting to a place where you recognize that something greater than you is saying, you are mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since you're crying, I'm going to tell a story.
Go.
And I'm probably going to. And so I was telling you over lunch, my younger son, he's 12 now. His name's Magnus. And we adopted him literally from birth. My wife was in the delivery room. She was 5 months pregnant and, was there when he was born. So 6 months later, we traveled to Fort Worth to go to family court to finalize the adoption. The way Texas law is, there's a 6-month kind of incubation period, then you get to go back. So we go in the courtroom, and my parents are there,
Yeah.
and some of my best friends, and my wife's parents are there, and Magnus's birth mom is there with her mother and her sister, and there's this whole group of people, and the bailiff comes in, and he gives my son a teddy bear.
Huh.
And the judge comes in and he says, man, usually our courtroom is full of sorrow because it's family court and it's divorce and who's getting custody and battles and fights. So he goes, when we get to do adoptions, it's a party in here.
Nice.
So he says, everyone come up, let's do this thing. And he goes through and asks us a bunch of questions. And when he finishes, he says, because of your answers, I declare that this boy is yours, as if he'd been born to you.
Nice.
And he has all the rights and opportunities of a Steppen. And I'm not a small man.
Yeah.
And I'm standing, I'm holding Magnus, and my wife is next to me,
Yeah.
and she's got her hand on my shoulder. And I suddenly realize her hand is off my shoulder, and I look at her, and she's looking at me with a face of just pure shock
Yeah.
because I'm sobbing.
Yeah.
First of all, I love my son.
Yeah.
More than that, I saw a real life picture of the acceptance of the Father
Yeah.
as he adopts me, and thought, "Phew,
Yeah. You got it a different way.
yeah."
You started to understand your worth a little bit more in that moment, huh?
And it knocked me over.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was 11 and a half, 12 years ago.
And it's still
And it's,
Yeah.
it still knocks me over.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks for your patience with my blubbering, and thanks for your sharing from a father's heart. And
Yeah.
I think it's we probably weren't expecting to have that conversation
No.
when we sat down in these chairs, but that's where it went, and that's a good thing. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one more question. Then I want to go to Dan. I've got a question for Dan. We're in this idea of worth. So clearly, in that moment, you understood worth. You may not have been putting those words on it, but you
Right.
understood something about that being valued, right?
Yeah.
So what you said earlier was, I'm the son of a son of a son of a son, right? All this whole lineage of pastors, which means that pretty much if the church is open, we're there. If
Sure.
the sermon's being preached, we're here, at least exposed to it, if we're listening or not listening.
Right.
You had plenty of opportunity to hear things that would have pointed you in the direction of your worth.
Yeah.
Right. And if on those days, let's say that in those days, that era, what if you were asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you feel connected to your worth? What do you think your number on that scale would have been?
In the moment, I probably would have said a 6 or a 7.
Okay, and what do you mean when you say in the moment? Does that suggest that it might not have actually been that high?
Yes, definitely.
So what was the real number?
3.5,
3.5.
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's that number right now?
Depending on what time of day it is.
Okay.
Usually
best time of day,
around
what
an
is it?
8,
Around an
9. Yeah.
Yeah. Feel
Yeah.
solid on that? That's
Yeah.
the real number?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So now I just hold on to that. So here's what does that mean for a person? Like what else? Okay. So we're kind of talking about this concept of worth, coming to an understanding that our worth isn't really earned. It's accepted. It's welcomed. If we can welcome and accept our worth, if we could perhaps go from a 3 to an 8 on our worth acceptance of our understanding of our worth, how could that potentially translate into our life? Like how might that translate into my personal life, and how might that translate into my business life?
Well, that's a good question. My thoughts are in that place and another place.
Okay, go with it.
Empty is empty.
Okay.
Lost is lost. Dark is dark.
Mhm.
A little bit of light. It's not dark anymore. So when you say that if you have an empty person in darkness, is there really a lot of value?
Mhm.
I think that when you take a glass, $3 glass,
Mhm.
and you fill it up with the $3 glass is worth $3.
Mhm.
You fill it up with diamonds.
Right.
Is that glass any more valuable? Is it worth any more?
Well, you would expect it to be, right?
But do the diamonds need the glass to make it more valuable?
No.
No, not at all. But the glass is still a $3 glass. Take that same glass and you're there in the desert with those diamonds, and you fill that glass up with water, and there's nothing else around to drink. Is that glass valuable? Is it worth a little bit
Yeah.
more? Why?
Because of what
Because it
has.
has sustaining life within it, because you got to have water. You don't got to
Right.
have diamonds. And so I think it really depends on what you fill yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
And do I think an empty person can be worth something? Yes. Do they have to have a spiritual relationship? Not necessarily. And the reason why I'm saying that is when darkness gets to be with light,
Mhm.
it can stay in the dark all it wants to, but however, when it's exposed to the light,
Mhm.
there's no darkness anymore.
Mhm.
So thus, when you have a person that is empty,
Mhm.
that is doesn't understand their worth, they've devalued themselves, that their life, they don't feel like they're worth anything, that they feel like they're a piece of junk, they feel
Mhm.
like they're insignificant. When they get around something that is of worth and value together,
Right.
when they start looking at that, I think that with goodness and with light, light penetrates the darkness. The darkness doesn't penetrate the light.
Yeah.
And I believe, as being a man of faith, I believe that every good thing comes from God. So if you take empty, lost is lost, empty is empty,
Mhm.
darkness is darkness, when it gets surrounded by the light, it impacts the darkness. When you get surrounded by good things, love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, self control,
Mhm.
that starts changing the darkness. So when people are in darkness, when they start seeing the light, they go, hey, I can start seeing some things. So the understanding and the receiving starts to happen,
Mhm.
I think. And now they can choose in their arrogance and in their egotistical way of continuing to think what they have, but then it goes back to kind of the results that they've been getting.
Right.
Now, some people are, they're just so stuck in their rut
Mhm.
that it may take them a lifetime to come out, and then they can choose to stay like that. And then there's many people that we all know that choose to stay like that.
Sure.
However, when you start asking, what would a wise person do? The only proper response is to start, hey, this light thing, getting to know a little bit more about that. And
Mhm.
they don't have to have a spiritual conversion over that. I mean, I know lots of good people that have never had a major spiritual thing,
Mhm.
but it's because good has penetrated into their and
Yeah.
started filling up some of that void.
Okay.
Now, is their void complete? No, of course not.
Okay.
Did that make any
Yeah. No,
sense?
I like that. I'm going to go back to my question.
Okay.
It was very good, and I'm glad you added that.
Well, I was
Yeah.
kind of playing off that
Yeah. Right.
empty
Yeah.
worth.
Okay. So if I understand my self to be not just a person with values, but a person of value, a person of worth, how might I translate that into what might I do with that? What would I be likely to do with that I might not if I don't really get my value
Are you talking like on a
on
professional?
a professional level, on a personal level, on any level? How would that translate? What would be the difference of really understanding?
Well, on the understanding level, if you start understanding the value of time,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
normally there's a cost which is associated with the pain
Okay.
to that. Now, and then there's a response. Am I going to continue to let this pain go ahead and continue to hurt?
Okay.
uh, without any struggle, there's no strength that's gained. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the value, I think, yes, it's been imparted onto us, but as we learn to grow and allow the struggle of the value of whatever that distinctive is, depending if it's professional, marital, relational, wherever that is, there has to be some growth there. And so, really, without the growth going on and some of the struggle,
Mm-hmm.
then you're never going to see really any production out of that. So,
Okay.
what am I willing to do? What
Uh-huh.
am I willing to submit to allow that growth to happen? And have I experienced enough pain yet to basically, we've all touched the hot stove.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know I got burnt one time, and guess what? I don't touch the hot stove anymore.
Right.
But there's some people that love to touch the hot
Mm-hmm.
stove. Why? They haven't experienced enough pain yet. I know in my life, I enjoyed the pain I was in, so I became self-destructive until things changed,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just kind of a total reverse. And there's a lot of counterfeit stuff going on, and so there's counterfeit value, which is made to look good, but it's really not because it's all based on self.
Yeah.
But the true fruit of good values, it produces, and there is a result in all the different areas. I think anybody can choose any area. And is the level of importance of what we see of lacking in our life that causes us pain,
Mm-hmm.
there's a response. You can either respond in a positive, regenerative, transformational type of way to transform into better, or you can continue to stay you are and actually degress if you continue to ignore and then you get a numbing to the pain.
Mm.
Then your world shrinks down to the size of you,
Mm.
which it goes back to being empty.
Okay. So
I know that was a long
is there no, it's good. Okay, so let's unpack it a little bit. Is there in this concept of worth and understanding my worth, is there an expansive nature to it? Meaning, if I understand my worth, I should rightfully expect things to expand, to grow, to get better. If I understand my worth, I could see my health value increase, my value I place on my time increase, my relational interactions get better, my financial value could increase. If I understand my worth, it by nature would take me on an expansive sort of upward journey.
it may be delayed in some areas depending on the timing,
Mm-hmm.
but we all know wherever there's an action, there's going to be a reaction.
Okay. So when you're talking about delay, you're kind of talking about a sowing and reaping concept,
Well, of
right?
course, yeah, as we
Yeah,
talked a little bit
sort of
about
like
earlier.
a gestation period. So you put the seed in the ground, and at first you can watch and it doesn't look like
Mhm.
anything's happening, and all of a sudden, there's
Well, let me show you this. I remember having, I can remember I was probably about 5, 6 years old when you take these little paper Dixie cups, and
hmm
my mother would give us lima beans. We'd get some dirt and pull it
Yeah.
in. We put it in the windowsill, which was
Mhm.
painted with lead paint, by the way. But
Explanations.
Yeah.
but we used to have these little bean cups. Well, they would start growing,
Yes.
and sometimes I would try to help it along a little bit.
Mhm.
I'd try to knock some of the dirt off. Well, the thing would continue to sprout, but it would die quickly. Where the ones that continue to struggle through the growth process, it would be alive and
You just
thrive.
let it happen.
And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the same. If we try to rush processes, we miss the distinctive character building points. Now,
Mm.
what's wonderful about this, we have the ability to be able to go back after we define kind of what's happened, where we've got the ability to think. We look at the results and we're able to evaluate. And a wise person goes back and tries to always improve it, even if you've got something nailed, whether if it's a talk or if
Mhm.
it's a podcast. A wise person will go back and always try to refine it up to the best place
Okay.
possible.
So then the expression of my understanding my worth would be that I would recognize it's worth the time it takes to go in these processes.
It is. It also depends on how hard you want to work on
It's
yourself.
worth the effort then.
I mean,
Right.
I've known some people who've had this major transformation, and then they get satisfied.
Uh-huh.
You know, um, it's good to go to the top of the mountain, but
Mhm.
it's also good to go up with other people. But some people, they'll get up going up the side of the mountain, and they pitch their tent, and they just want to stay there for the rest of their life. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of people just want to prepare for the finish line
Right.
of their life, and they just want to stay right where they are. They don't want
Mhm.
to continue moving forward. Me, I just want to continue living every day, maximize it to the best of my ability. Do
Mhm.
I have some lazy moments? Well, sure I do. But I think the one thing that I've got to prepare for is I need to be going toward my vision
Mhm.
and my calling.
Right.
Um, it's very difficult to have a vision where you want to go if you haven't been called.
Mhm.
And how you get your calling is by spending enough time and really going back and thinking and find what are you great at, what are your strengths, and what would you like to do? If money wasn't an option, where would you like to end up?
Okay.
That'll help start to find, which is another talk. for
Sure,
another
okay.
day.
I've got,
Okay.
I've
Yes.
got some framing context,
Yeah,
just
right.
trying to tie it all together. I think from my experience in how this has been captured, you asked the question, how would somebody implement that into their life
Mhm.
if they knew what their value was?
Right.
I think that there's a simple approach to look at this capturing what this process looks like, and that's an external approach versus an internal approach.
Okay.
And in my experience, when you don't know that value
Mm-hmm.
and you are looking from inside out externally to get that value, you're always chasing what's next.
Okay.
The trajectory is I have to catch more, and
Yeah.
then I have to stop and analyze. I have to catch more.
Mm-hmm.
You're always constantly trying to get more
Right.
to feel, when am I going to feel it? When
Yeah.
is it coming?
Mm-hmm.
The trajectory of you knowing that worth
Mm-hmm.
from the inside out
Right.
massively shifts where you're going in your life,
Mm-hmm.
because that strain and stress of you constantly capturing to prove and catch it
Yeah.
is not there. The load is lighter
Yeah.
because you're driving everything with a peace, knowing that I don't have to go out and catch and harvest and measure and catch and harvest and measure and constantly be doing this because I can't figure it out externally myself.
Right.
I know internally that I'm good there. I'm
Right.
carried there from the jump.
Right.
So all that stress and all that is gone,
Right.
and it radiates out of you from the inside out.
Mm.
That's the difference between external and internal.
Yeah.
And how do you apply that to your life in where you're going to go and accomplish that? And when you look at these concentric circles, the core of that starts
With value.
internally,
Mm-hmm.
inside out.
That's why value is at the center.
Right.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah,
Well
I was there thinking, we can get up and we can talk in front of massive groups as we have about the concentric circles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much what we're taught, it's what is caught.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to believe what you say until it's proven by what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk through value and we hear people talking, there's all kinds of people on all the different platforms talking about this and success. But when you start listening to them, I question, how good are their values?
Right.
I mean, other than that, it's just jibber jabber. And I'm not saying they can't have success,
Right.
defined by who,
Mm-hmm.
but is it significant? Is it transforming people's lives for the long eternal haul, which
Mhm.
is going to outlive us all?
Yeah.
And then what are they leaving to the other generations? What succession of life are they generally going to have?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it comes out very shallow when everything is built on themselves, if they haven't gone and done the refining work
Yeah.
of what they've been caught and then taught, instead
Mhm.
of trying to just teach.
Yeah. Nice. Well, good stuff. I think we will talk about this.
Have you found have you gotten any value out of it today?
I've gotten value.
Okay, well, can you name 3 things that you've
Yeah.
learned
So
today?
let's go backwards.
No, why don't we go with you? Well, what have you
yeah.
gotten out of today? Just
Yeah. No,
just
I'm
from
going
my
with me.
feedback.
I'm going backwards from
okay.
so you asked me, so I have to catch it. Somehow I have
Okay.
to catch it.
Right.
Right.
At the end of the day, we've had a great talk.
Yeah.
And you've done a wonderful job, and thank you so
Mhm.
much. You've stretched me today, and you made me think on my feet, and
Mm.
you got me hopping around now. Instead of
right.
just-
Like
I thought I came in running.
Like what was it? The floppy turtle?
yeah, yeah. No,
That's an inside, yeah.
But I think today is really. Thank you for the value that you've
Yeah.
added to me
Mhm.
by taking the time to ask the questions to really
Certainly.
force thought.
Mhm.
But just for my own learning,
Mhm.
can you share with us
Yeah,
2 or
right.
3 things what you've heard
Yeah,
us say about value?
let me recap on. So I have to catch it, and I think in that catching it is, I could be sitting beside you. You can catch it all day long, and I could be missing it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a very personal thing. This understanding of your mind, this understanding of, no matter what, you are a person of value. And however we would say that, like we might say, hey, we're made in the image of God, or we might even just say, hey, I understand that I'm a person of value who adds value to people, right? I really get that. And I'm good with that. And I'm going with that. I think that a real great expression of, I could be chasing that outside of me all the time, but until I understand that inside me, then I'm always going to be chasing. And even if I feel like I get it for a while, it is temporary. And you know, when you were saying that, by the way, it made me think of the idea that like most people that win the lottery after 10 years are dead broke or in prison, right? So they got something from outside of them, but they are still missing the value inside of them. We were talking about Maxwell Maltz, who basically figured out that, hey, I can change people's appearance, but their image of themselves, their value of themselves, their understanding of their self-worth isn't changing. And so, you know, they're not moving forward, which is why he went to that inside out place of understanding that. And I think that the idea that, again, I could, if I was only measuring on what I perceive is going on in between my ears, I'm probably never going to fully understand my worth.
Yeah.
But I think also the encouraging thing about that is, wait a minute, you mean the son of a son of a son of a son can like have stuff he wouldn't want to be broadcasted? Well, there's hope for me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm the son of something. But
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that I think those would certainly, you know, kind of going backwards would be three great takeaways. I think also is the idea that it is both important for me to know what's at the core of my being in terms of what I value and how that drives me, how that motivates me, how
That's
that
good.
makes me show up. And also that I need to, I need to understand my worth. And so one of the most freeing things I heard was comparing the idea of abundance to prosperity. Is that abundance is like I can see that there's an abundance of things. I can understand. In our conversation, you were talking about the number of molecules that we breathe in every breath, the septillion or whatever, the 12
sextillion, yeah.
sextillion is 12 times whatever to the 100th power. And I could sort of intellectually understand that, but prosperity is, and for me too.
Mm-hmm.
And for me too. And I think with worth, it's the similar idea. It still is a prosperity principle. In other words, I could understand there's an abundance of being a person of value. If I hear you talk about your company and how love shows up, that's meaningful to me. And I could be doing that too. In other words, I could be a person who takes an inside out journey and stops wondering whether or not I'm a worthwhile person to do that. I can just get out there and go do some good in the world.
Well,
right?
you mentioned there the other day a distribution center.
Yeah, be a center.
Yeah.
Nice. So those would be some of my immediate takeaways for sure.
So what are 2-3 things that you value?
Yeah, well, I definitely value freedom.
Hmm.
Freedom. I value the idea that we were built with the opportunity to make a choice. If you think about love, for example, okay, I think free will is one of the greatest demonstrations of God's brilliance. Because if we cannot choose, we cannot love. If I had no free will, I couldn't really claim love. So I think that I value that. And I think sometimes you value things when you feel like what you value is maybe perhaps under attack, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in places where, people might want to overstep the freedom of our physical well-being, the freedom of our opportunity to own things, the freedom of our chance to grow wealth, grow a business. But not only that, the freedom of the way that we think, right? There's a lot of that. So I think that probably gave some clarification to that for me. I also like the idea of expansion. I like the idea that if I am really operating in harmony with who God is and how He made the world, that is an expansive journey. I really value the concept of co-creating. So I definitely value refining, which is partly why there's a name of this is the refinery. So there will be at some point in the refinery the words on the wall in the other room: co-create, expand, refine. because
Good.
because those are valuable to me. And of course, there are many other things that I value, but in terms of what's vital to me, what's at the core, those would be the things that would be it for me.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Nice. All right. Well, so we're going to get into another conversation, and probably you and I will see how it goes. But we're going to continue this conversation on values and talk about these other parts of the concentric circles. Next would be belief, and we're going to talk about that as well. So I will definitely look forward to that.
Okay.